Hello everyone and welcome to Soul GPS. This is Ava and today I wanted to talk to you guys about an important topic that I believe merits a little bit more time and attention, and that is what is the difference between empathy and codependency? How does one become the other, and how you could recover if you find yourself having strong codependent tendencies into being an empath. The two tend to get lumped together, which they really shouldn't, because there are a lot of differences between them, and I'm going to explain that. And also, it is very important to be aware of the traits that consist of each one so that you know where you are, and you also will know what is the threat level of you being targeted by an abusive person, such as a narcissist, psychopath, sociopath. They look for these specific traits in people in order to engage with them, because they know that people who are empathic, people who are much more open to believing in other people, trusting other people, are going to question them less. And again, with trusting others versus trusting oneself, which is something that needs to be learned, and often, it's not taught. Many of our parents don't teach us how to trust ourselves, so it gets sabotaged by an abuser. So we need to know a little bit more about, who we are, where do we identify ourselves on the spectrum, how we can recover, how we can set these boundaries, and so on. So we're going to dive into that in this video. So let's begin by talking about empathy and what is an empath. And I've been doing quite a bit of research, also soul searching, talking to my clients, most of whom have very strong empathic traits, obviously. To kind of devise a bit of a profile, create a bit of a model here, because as you may know, the model and the map that I'm going to kind of draw here is not the territory, it's not the actual reality. This is just something that can help us identify where we are and take the right action in order to help ourselves grow and become more self-aware. So an empathic person, to me, is someone who can be either immature, unaware, empath, someone who's just good-hearted, decent, open, wants to help other people, has those, it's almost like innate, inborn qualities. And then there's the mature empath who knows who they are, and they have learned to protect their greatest gifts. And here's where I think that being targeted by narcissists or psychopaths or all the other highly toxic individuals is key in terms of helping us wake up to who we really are, because so many of us amble through the world, just kind of innocently, half asleep, believing, projecting our good heart and onto other people, even though they may not deserve that. And therefore, our trust in other people is almost more like on the level of naivete. And so we kind of walk blindly into these dark alleys, believing it's all going to be good. And before we know it, we end up in these really toxic entanglements, and it becomes very painful to break ourselves out of it. But I think that in some ways, this is how we can take what has happened to us and turn it into our advantage. So it can definitely help us become more self-aware. So in general, an empathic person, is a person that has a high moral compass, is very decent, kind, open-hearted, open-minded. It's a great listener and able to really tune in to an atmosphere, to be able to discern the temperature of who are the people who are in the room with you, what might they need. And of course, again, if it's not guarded, these people can become people pleasers and put their own needs at risk and on the back burner in order to make sure that everyone else is happy. Empaths do have this tendency, and it's a fine line that we walk, and we have to be very careful that our needs are met first before we're able to help other people. And here's another question that comes up a lot, and that is, the whole idea of boundaries and becoming quote unquote more selfish, right? And there's this fear that the empaths have. Makes kind of sense, but just because of who we are. It's like, oh, but what if it's going to turn me into a bitch or a jerk, and I'm not going to be nice anymore. And the thing is, like, I would say that is a risk, because it is so deeply rooted in us to be this way and to be tuned into other people and want to make the world a better place, that if we just become a little bit more selfish and a little bit more self-centered, it becomes healthy, it becomes more balanced. So I wouldn't worry about that really at all. So now we're going to look into the domain where it splits. You have the immature empath and the mature empath. So, I would say that let's talk about the mature empath, because the immature empath is the one who is at the highest risk of becoming a codependent. So a mature empath is very much so aware of their emotions. So here are actually like 3 qualities of a mature empath. Let's put it this way, 3 qualities. Quality number 1 is self-awareness. They know who they are. They might not know everything. I mean, we constantly grow, change, mold, life shapes us, events shape us. But they know that, they have strengths in these areas, but they also have vulnerabilities. And so they're able to watch themselves in a room where, there are other needy people. They know when to say no, they know when to draw the line. They also know basic things like what they like and what they don't like. So when they're asked to do certain things, and if it doesn't resonate with them, they'll say, no, thank you, but I'm good. I don't really want to do that, right? Or they can make a little bit more reasonable choices, because they do involve they pause, they give themselves some self-respect to pause and really reflect on a decision, as opposed to just saying yes to everything because it sounds good and feels good in the moment, right? So they're much less reactive. So self-awareness, number 1. Number 2 is mindfulness, and that is really key, because one sort of flows from the other. So first comes self-awareness. Second comes mindfulness. Knowing who you are, you're going to feel much more comfortable in your skin, and you're going to spend less time ruminating and questioning things that a person who's less mature might do. Be like, well, do I want this? Do I want that? Indecisiveness is a hallmark of people who have been abused, and people who, are naturally empathic, but they want to people please. They want to make everybody happy. I just recently read a really cool quote, and it's in one of my articles. So if you follow me on Medium, or if you don't follow me on Medium, start following me on Medium, because I'm putting out a lot of articles on all sorts of subjects, including self-improvement now, which is something that I want to start branching off into a little bit, to kind of like show you the life after an abuse, and the immense possibilities that exist there, and how you can continue to grow yourself. But of course, I will stick with this subject. I have so many topics to cover. It's going to take me years to cover them all. So in any case, so what this guy said, and I forgot his name, but what he said was basically, I do not have a fail-safe advice for success, but I do have a fail-proof or fail-safe advice for failure, and that is try to please everyone all the time, right? And so this is never going to work, because there's always going to be someone who doesn't like who you are, who doesn't like things about you, and you can spend all your life wringing yourself out, turning yourself inside out, and there's still be somebody who doesn't like you. So forget that. It's the sooner the better. Really focus on yourself, and your people will find you, your tribe will find you. But that was a little bit of a side note. So mindfulness is just the ability to be present and to be with other people, or to focus and be really 100% there, or to focus on the things that you're doing. There's just so much less questioning in your mind about these things. You're able to decide faster, easier, not worry about other people's think about you. And it's just a really luxurious state of mind. And I know for myself, I oscillate in and out. There are sometimes challenges. I still get pulled in many directions. I still encounter flashbacks. I have my CPSD moments, and I'll talk a little bit more about that a little later in this video. But when you really are able to settle in and be present, it really helps. It changes the quality of your existence. And one of the things you can do in order to grow your mindfulness is, of course, meditation, because that teaches you what's quality number 3 of a mature empath, and that is mindfulness. I'm sorry, I just said that. And that is emotional detachment. So instead of believing that your emotions are your reality, which they're not. They're just a response to whatever is going on. You're able to just kind of observe them slightly from a distance, go like, oh, this is what I'm feeling right now. You can name the emotion. And you can also trace it back to what incited it. And there's often a link between the present moment and a trigger that occurred and something that happened in the past. And it's almost like you're going through a time warp when this happens, and you're like being shuffled into the past. And now it's suddenly you're here in this moment, you're in the 2018, but your mind and your body are reacting to something that happened in 1997, So cultivating emotional detachment is so liberating, and it's so key. And it takes a while. It takes some years, maybe months for some people, if you really pour yourself into it and start doing it. And it's a fascinating journey, extremely liberating. So I think that these are the 3 qualities that a mature empath has. And now if we take a person who is very much into wanting to make sure that everybody's happy and the world is a good place to live in, and so on, very highly hyper selfless, and we put them then inside of an environment that is full of abusers, now we're looking at something called toxic empathy, or also known as codependency, where your life really shifts and your inner psychological makeup really begins to contort and distort your reality. And so here are some of the qualities of a codependent person. There are oftentimes there's something called love addiction, and I don't think that only runs for romantic relationships. I think it also can run for friendships. I remember myself when I was in school, in high school, I would validate my sense of worth by the number of friends that I had. It wasn't about quality, it was about quantity. So I went through that period for a while. And so, but what was really interesting is that once I set myself a goal of, I really want to befriend this person, and I would befriend them, it would not at all make any difference in the way I was feeling. So it didn't really work. But there was this addiction, this desire to really always want to be with somebody. It's very difficult to be alone for those people. What else? The other thing really crucial and important here is porous boundaries. So again, when put inside of an environment of vultures, and there's still that propensity to want to help, to want to, make them feel good, make them happy, it's like it becomes very difficult to tell the difference between ourselves and our environment. And especially if, say, a covert narcissist comes in and begins with their opening line of a pity story, right? Which is often what they do, is they would tell you that to see how empathic are you, what are their chances of really luring you in. And so if you pass the test, but if you don't have the proper boundaries and proper protection in place, then you might likely get so wrapped up in that story, and you're going to be thinking about it and ruminating about it and think like, poor woman or poor man, what can I do to help? And you get so invested, and it's almost like you're leaning in. You're already outside of your safety zone, and you really want to jump in, and that's what they're waiting for, right? And then slowly but surely the bond will begin to form, and they will even tell you like, wow, you and I have the same exact insecurities and the same goals. Oh, and I love that too. Oh my God, where have you been? Where have you been all my life? I've been looking for somebody like you, right? And then you feel like, oh my God, I found my prince or princess. Actually, this, I wrote an article. I kind of wanted to keep it light-hearted, but it's a serious topic, and that's the things that narcissists will tell you in order to cast a spell on you. And I will link it down below. It's on Medium. And I've been getting quite pretty good responses from it. I just went live a couple of days ago, and it lists down all these things that they're going to tell you, and then what does that really mean? Again, a little bit of a sidetrack here, but coming back to this. Codependent people have weak identity because they want to help everybody, and they kind of like extend themselves almost like an octopus into all the other people who need them lives, and so they come almost like an amalgam of all of them, but never quite sure fully feel who they are, and their identity is in there and it's intact. It just has never been really explored. So don't feel, if you identify yourself as a person who's codependent, don't feel like, oh, like it's all lost for you, like you you're empty, you will feel empty. That's the thing that happens, because the enmeshment is so deep. That's where you find your safety, is in enmeshing with the other person. And the emptiness that happens when you detach yourself is excruciatingly painful. But that does not mean that you're empty inside. That means is that there is just this space, this zone between all of the illusion that you've been living and your real authentic self. And you need to cross that chasm. You need to swim across those dark waters to return back home to who you are. And there's just fear. There's so much fear in those dark waters. There's sharks swimming in there, and there's just all sorts of ghosts and demons and things that may be haunting you, right? Because like, what if there's no one there? What if I'm lonely for the rest of your life? We begin to catastrophize, right? Which is irrational thinking, and that is believing that the emotions are reality. So that's, see again here, the difference between a mature empath who knows the difference. Like, no, these are just feelings. They're going to go away. I'm going to accept them and embrace them and feel them and wait for the storm to pass. All is well. I'm going to be well. Good affirmations, right? I'm going to be well. Everything's going to be okay. I'm in the process of healing. This is a stage that is going to pass, which indeed it is. Indeed it is. So you're not empty inside. You're just beginning to scratch the surface because you've been denied to be fully who you are most of your life. So, this is a very delicate and incredibly important process of returning back to yourself and reclaiming yourself back. So back to the subject, it's all really part of the subject, but to stay on track. So codependent people, weak identity, again, identifying with everything around them but themselves. That will change once you start to recover. Finding safety and enmeshment. Often something that's learned early on. For me, for instance, it was a thing I learned from my connection with my mom. I didn't know the difference between her and myself. What she liked, I liked. What she said, I said. And I was never really taught. She did whatever she could to, navigate through this. And I realized this is transgenerational, story. But I was never taught how to fully differentiate myself and become different, become my own person, say no. It felt really unsafe. So I kept close. And that's where I found safety. So in the future, as I was starting to form partnerships with men, it was really interesting. I had such a big revelation one day when I realized this, was that it wasn't that I was looking for my father, who was more of the neglectful kind, more absent in my life. It wasn't that I was looking for my dad in my boyfriends. I was looking for my mom. Because I was looking to enmesh and get to the point where the two became one. And that's a very unhealthy dynamic. Because the moment that they turn away and they do something else, even all of my relationships weren't abusive. But when you have this form of enmeshment, like the person turns around and they want to do their thing, they have a life, they got to go to work, I would feel abandoned and empty and bad and scared, right? So this is something definitely to work on, because you do want to have your own independent life in the future if you want to create healthy partnership, and then you want them to have that too, because that's the only way you can grow as two individuals and then share that experience. Topic for another video. I'm going to be making more videos about healthy partnerships. So that's that. Another thing about a codependent is that they cannot say no. They feel like we owe something to the world. Like we have to say yes to everybody. It's almost as if we were responsible for all the evils in the world, and now this life was almost like a penance. It was like our way to pay back. I was trying to really unpack this in myself, and I was like, my God, there's so much irrational thinking in all of this that keeps us imprisoned in feeling really shitty about ourselves and sacrificing our well-being for something that is going to destroy us eventually, because it does. Like when we come in to a situation when there are abusive people, and like from this point of view, it's not going to turn out well. And then finally, we sacrifice our goals for that of the other. So you may have your dreams. Pretty much all people have them, regardless of whether we're empaths or codependents, or we all have something that we want, right? We all have something that we want. We might just not acknowledge it as much because, again, other people's needs are more important than our own. But most of us have something, some form of an aspiration, and when we get involved with other people as codependents, it's so easy for us to forget about all that and put other people's priorities as our own. So watch out for this. And well, actually, this brings me to the next point, which is how an empath becomes a codependent. And then we're going to talk about the reversal of how a codependent person can become an empath again and reclaim their sovereignty. So oftentimes, I would say that the process begins early, begins in childhood. Neglect plays a huge role. So feeling like the invisible child, tuning into what your parents are doing, becoming the helper, becoming the savior of one of the parents, being parentified, right? So, little boys becoming almost like a substitute husband for the husband who isn't present, right? Or the little girls wanting to take mothers or fathers' emotional burdens on their own shoulders, and so on. So that can create codependency. Can get more insidious, where parent will deliberately reward a child for meeting their expectation and punish them for not meeting those expectations. That can breed perfectionism. And the article that I'm writing right now, and I'm going to link to that here in the space below. So if you'd like to read about perfectionism and how you can overcome that. And also, it forms poor communication, because a child is then unable to communicate how they're feeling because they're ashamed of their feelings, since they read it as if they're a bother to their parents, to their family. So they will shove that away, keep that hidden, and again, go on acting as if everything was okay, and really getting used to the idea that their needs and wants and desires, they're just not important. What's important is what's out there and what other people want. That's the only way they can get validation. And so a young empath would have no awareness, no sense of being present, because they're always kind of like oftentimes very dissociated, right? When growing up in abusive homes, this is a protective mechanisms. We basically disappear from the present moment, and we appear somewhere else. We create fantasy. We create, our imagination can be really developed that way. Doesn't mean that it is very healthy way to do that, but that's kind of how it is. And dissociation actually has been linked to hyper creativity, high imagination, and high IQ, very broad intelligence, because you have so much more room and you stretch your mind to other places other than just being here and now. So, and you're able to think in an abstract way early on in developing that capability. So if you do have that, you can actually turn that into your advantage and do all sorts of things with it. But that's also a topic for another video. And also the other thing about a young empath is that their emotions are going to be their reality. So they won't be able to really make a difference. So as the storm comes in, triggered by whatever, their whole world may start collapsing. And then there's, again, this over-dependence on other people. You begin to feel insecure, maybe alone, maybe like you don't matter. All of these old feelings of worthlessness will start coming in. And so you want to attach yourself to another person. And if it is a toxic person, you can be 100% sure that they're going to take full advantage of that. And they will manipulate you with that need. So a narcissist can absolutely turn an empathic person into a codependent person. So they might target an empath, but then slowly, chip away at their identity, at their sense of self-esteem, especially in longer relationships, until they will sort of imprison them in that way, because it is a form of mental and emotional imprisonment. And so, of course, they're going to bond first by elevating their qualities and traits, telling them how wonderful they are, how they've been waiting for them all their lives, blah, 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 all that stuff, right? And then they will start bringing in these criticisms and judgments. And it usually begins with, and that's a big red flag I would look out for when you're meeting new people, is do they judge and criticize others? Most of us in some ways, do. Somebody cuts us off and this, we say, oh my God, we all react to these things. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about that, just think, this person, look at them. It's all about that, right? That's kind of their form of entertainment. That's a big red flag, because you can be pretty sure that they're going to do that to you sooner or later. And that is exactly what happens. So first they elevate you, and then they start to criticize you. And there is no easier way to destroy someone's self-esteem and self-confidence than by doing that, right? Because now your heart is vested to you. They're your whole world. They're the most important person in your life, because they kind of are. Like, our partners become the most important person in our lives. That's like number one after ourselves, right? And then there's our parents and our family, from which we detach at some point. But so anyway, that's why it's so important to take your time selecting your partner, is because that is the person who you get really close to, right? And who you hopefully will build a life with. And if they are doing that to other people and then to you, then know that this is not a healthy person to build a partnership with, because they're the people who are going to betray you. That they can't be loyal. It's impossible. So the other thing they're going to do is they're going to start pushing boundaries. You know, you may have healthy boundaries coming into a relationship like that, but they will push and push. They will walk into a shower, you know, tell you some things, and just, you know, maybe it's cute and fun at first, but if it feels kind of weird, then it's weird. You know, they're pushing. They will walk into your room without knocking, show up at your place unannounced. You know, they are going to order your food for you when you're going out, you know, pushing and pushing and pushing. You will say no, and they're going to force you to say yes. So if that's huge red flags, you know, if you see that happen. So they will do that. They will not respect your no. You know, and then it will get to a point at some point down the line, is that they will force you to do something that you will be later ashamed of. And that is where they kind of get you. Because what they can do now is they can turn it around and they say, well, you know, you're so this and that, how that you did that, nobody's going to want you now. And being hyper conscientious and hyper empathic, you're going to be thinking about this, and you might even buy into that belief, saying, holy shit, they're right. Like, I don't really deserve to be loved now, blah, blah, blah. Don't buy into that. You're going to have to work on your self-forgiveness to eliminate that belief system. It's highly toxic. None of us are perfect. We've all made mistakes. Often those mistakes are circumstantial. What's more important is the values you hold within, the awareness you have right now, and what you want to do with that moving forward. It's not you have to be forever condemning yourself for the things you have done. So something they will do. So, and essentially it will create this cycle. They call it the abuse cycle, and that is where they provoke you and then they soothe you. They provoke you and then they soothe you, and you're waiting for those moments that are diminishing when they come in and embrace you and tell you everything is okay, only to then again turn around and act completely cold and indifferent towards you, destroying yet another layer of yourself, right? And then they will create these episodes of abandonment, like they're going to just walk out and ghost, right? And not text you, don't tell you where they go, vanish for a few days, and then you will cultivate that fear within yourself. And fear is addictive. You know, emotions are addictive. Once they really take root, it can take a few days, almost like an emotional hangover, to get them out of your system. It takes a lot of work. So when they start inciting those emotions in you, they will start running in the background. So you'll always be kind of on guard and afraid, and you'll be much more prone to making mistakes and, you know, saying things that you don't mean and so on. So very toxic. Again, by then you like closing your door, you're out, no contact, finished, ideally. But they will do that, and so to make you reactive and to make you off balance. So that's how an empathic person who has really good intentions, is really sensitive, soft and sweet, can become a codependent. Because once you come out of that relationship, there's a form of addiction that is left over, and that is normal. That's why it's super important to take at least a year off after one of those toxic relationships to really work on yourself and prepare yourself for a harmonious relationship. Because if you meet somebody prematurely, your reactivity, you misinterpreting their actions, if they're decent, if they're good, right, might end up, taking something that could be potentially good, and that will not work out now anymore. Or the other way around, which is that you might, in a vulnerable state, you might attract, not so much that you might attract, but you might be targeted by another abuser, by another predator. There's a lot of them out there. About 25% of people who have pathology, some form of a pathology in the world. That's a lot. So I would be really careful. I would take the time to really recover. So, okay, back now to recovery. This video is long, but that's okay, because I remember you guys just recently, I read some comments that came in, and they were like, I like your long videos. So that's good, because this one is a long one. So recovery. How can you go from being a codependent person hooked on, hooked on abuse, hooked on having to be with somebody else, not really feeling yourself, having very weak identity, just feeling like your whole world has just collapsed. You literally don't want to be in your own skin. How can you do that and then take your greatest strengths and let them come forth, right? How can you heal yourself? So this is the beautiful thing about being empathic, which is what all codependents have empathy. So we can take that empathy and make it from being toxic by overextending it outwards too much to the point when you're depleted, by reining it back in and using the empathy towards yourself and embracing yourself and loving yourself. It's almost like this concept seems so difficult for so many people to grasp. Like, what does it mean to love myself? It's always, I remember I was thinking the same thing. And to me, it was really down to actions, to taking concrete steps towards really spending time with myself, listening to myself, getting to know myself, and so on. But it's almost as if, imagine that you are someone else. Imagine that you are a friend, you're your best friend, and you're looking at yourself from an outside perspective. You almost have to kind of step out and see what you've been through, see what you're going through, see your greatest qualities, and treat yourself the way your best friend would treat you. That might be a little bit helpful in order to kind of like shift out of this perspective, because if we're down in that cognitive dissonance, it's still in that trauma bond, we are so much more prone to self-loathe, right? Because that internalized abuse effect that is going on inside of us thinking all these negative thoughts that we're worthless, no wonder they don't want to be with us, they're not hoovering me, that means I wasn't that important. If they're not hoovering you, that is the greatest blessing ever, because these people are dangerous and they can destroy lives. So be glad you're not being hoovered, because that is that much more opportunity to heal faster. So there will be that bumpy area, that bumpy period when you have to swim with the sharks, swim in the darkness, and really face all of your fears. But the sooner you do it, the better. That's going to pass. So recovery, here are the 3 steps, exactly the same thing that qualifies a mature empath. So you're going to have to sort of raise yourself up and do a bit of self-work here to get there. Number 1 is self-awareness. So being really getting to know yourself, observe what you're going through, and ideally write it down or record it. That's what I would do. And I wrote that, I talked about that in my externalization video. You can look that up on my channel. So this is a form of externalizing, and it's going to be daunting, I know, because most of the thoughts that we regurgitate over and over are like the same thing for sometimes weeks or months. The same thing, like, why did it happen? How did I let it happen? I am this, I'm that. But I'm actually this. And you're kind of like arguing with yourself. So if you let it, here's what I think. Our mind is like a recording device. So whatever you're used to thinking is going to continue thinking when you kind of let go. It's like being on an automatic pilot. So if you leave it like this and sort of ignore it, then it will just all it will do is it will just sink deeper into your subconscious and will keep sabotaging you from the deep, right? But if you take that as it's happening and you really kind of look at it and say, okay, let's see what the hell is going on in here. Let's sort through this mess, right? And not in a judgmental way, but in a kind way and in an inquiring, curious way. And there's no better way to do this, personally for myself, than it was to journal. Journal the hell out of it every day. Just write it all down, all of that dialogue, and then kind of look at it, and then do it again the next day, and then again the next day, and you'll see how it repeats. And then eventually it's almost like your mind kind of gets like, okay, it's enough, and it's going to start dropping some of those thoughts, and the new thoughts will come, and deeper. You're going to dig deeper and deeper, and that's a great way to get to know who you are. And then spend quality time with yourself, doing the things that you like. Ask yourself, do I like this? Do I not like this? And really learn to make faster decisions. Get in touch with your intuition. That's how you cultivate self-awareness. And you actually kind of almost put things on the line and quickly say, do I like this? Yes, I'm going to do this. Or no, I'm not going to do it. And see where that takes you. Right? See where that takes you. That's kind of the map that we have inside. That's what I call soul GPS, and why I named this channel. That's because I think it's just such an incredible innate ability that we all have that connects us with our higher purpose, with the higher spirit, right? All the way down to our DNA. It's instinctual, deep in the gut, but it's also, it has a higher purpose to it all. So it's a great way to navigate through life. And initially it's going to be very cloudy, but you can feel it, how it feels in your gut. When you think of something, is it expansive? Does it feel like, oh, I have some room inside me? Do I have some space to breathe? Or does it feel like contractive, like, no, this feels kind of like I'm crammed in this space? That means it's a no. So it's one way to do it. So number one, self-awareness. Cultivate self-awareness. Number two, cultivate mindfulness. Okay. This is really important. This is a recent revelation here, and I just couldn't wait to bring this to you. But it's the whole idea of overthinking and over-ruminating. And I know that it's easier for me to say because I'm like a year and a half away from the big disaster and in a very different place in my life. And I wish for all of you, actually, I know that if you stick on this path, you're going to get to a much better space. So I want to kind of like be the example to show you that there's a way out of it, and you can feel much more clear, and and just have a much better life away from all of that really difficult, heavy stuff. So in any case, so there's overthinking, right? There's overthinking, and then there are the feelings, right? So it's the thoughts and the feelings, and we kind of oscillate between the two. They're all linked together. But what tends to happen is when something occurs in a reality that triggers us to feel a certain way, what happens is there's this avalanche, this rush of thoughts. Why did this happen? What did I do? Da 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 da. Of course, if you're an empath, codependent, recovering, you're going to have a tendency to take the blame. I just did something. Why did I do? And so on. And this can go on, and you can start going deeper and deeper and deeper, trying to untangle this. But the problem with that is that even though there might be some positive thoughts in that as well, some self-forgiveness and all that, you're trying to rationalize this thing out, bring yourself back out. I hope you're following what I'm saying. It doesn't sound like just pure gibberish, but stay with me here for a minute. So as you are, trying to help yourself out, you're actually plunging deep because you're actually in the middle of a CPTSD flashback. And those emotions and thoughts can be so overpowering that it's really easy to lose yourself in it. So I want you to know that your emotions are not reality. They're not facts. They are just a response to some form of a stimuli. And your consciousness actually has control over it, and you can steer it anywhere you want once you achieve a level of mastery. But to become a master, you got to start somewhere, right? So this is a prime wonderful place to start, because almost like we get into a point of despair where we're going to drown unless we learn to swim. So to use this again as an opportunity to teach yourself how to do this. So what you want to do is immediately catch yourself and say, oh, I'm overthinking, I'm ruminating, I'm having a CPTSD flashback, and return to what you're doing. And it's going to keep pulling you away, and you're just going to keep returning. Breathe, distract yourself, pattern interrupt, go outside, do something different so that you don't stay in that thing. But if you do get pulled in, here's what I'd like you to do. This is where we do the feeling honoring meditation, what I call, and that is you basically sit with yourself, you breathe, and you just observe your feelings and you name them. So when am I feeling? I'm feeling grief, I'm feeling tremendous sadness, see, the naming gives you a little bit of space, a little bit of distance of what's happening, and allows you to disidentify with it. So it's almost like an emotional objectification practice, and that is incredibly liberating. So and that really brings me to the emotional detachment, right? So you want to observe yourself, you want to not judge yourself. These are parts of you, and you want to embrace them. But that doesn't mean that you don't have power to change them. You will, but right now they're so overpowering. It's very difficult to, change a hurricane when it comes. Like, you can't really do much about it. It just has, sometimes it will come, it will pass, and things will get better. But use every opportunity where you find yourself falling into the pits of despair to learn something about you. Say, observe the chain reaction of thought, feeling, thought, feeling, thought, feeling. Maybe even write it down. If you're too exhausted, you might be just pinned down to the bed. I remember it just happened to me a lot. It just drains all energy out of me. I would have my phone and just record it, just record what's happening. Once you realize the chain reaction, you'll memorize it because you'll see it repeating all the time. Once you understand your chain reaction, you're going to be free. Because you say, here's what's happening. So you'll be prepared, and you will no longer have to react to what's happening to you. And that's how you can recover your tendency to being codependent, fall into the pits of this emotional despair, and then wanting to hook into somebody to help you, to rescue you, into becoming a master swimmer and a navigator of your own feelings. And therefore, detach yourself. So here's another really wonderful thing that mature empaths have, is they treat emotions as data, as raw data. It's not like, this is my reality right now. No, This is just that, oh, what is it telling me? Oh, I'm feeling kind of yucky right now. You're walking into a room, right? I'm feeling like something's off. And you're having this conversation. You're observing people like, oh my God, this person, I'm not feeling really good around them. So I'm going to steer clear to avoid the disaster. Ooh, and this person feels awesome. So I'm going to go talk to them. And that's how you navigate through life. And these are really helpful tools you're developing for yourself in your recovery. So, this is really awesome. So, and last thing I want to say to you is a subject that I've been really digging lately. It's fascinating, and I encourage you to look into that if you would like. And that is the connection between emotions and peptides, between our proteins. So there is actually a physical reaction that occurs in our body when we have a certain emotion. And here's the thing: is that if we didn't have, let's just imagine, if we didn't have that, if we didn't have memory from the past lodged deeply in our cells, what would likely happen is you would get an emotional reaction. That emotion would live through its cycle, which is about 90 seconds or so. Then it would pass, and then another one would come in, or you would be just feeling open and spacious inside. But instead, what happens for people who have been through abuse is that there will be a trigger, then an emotion will come up. That emotion now reawakens all of your cells into this kind of a lattice network matrix, whatever, of what you are used to feeling when you're abused, and that kind of takes a hold of you, and these peptides, right, begin to produce, and they begin to activate the receptors on your cells, which then makes all of your cells behave in a certain way that confirms, it creates this confirmation bias of reality being now in sync, or seemingly so, in sync with what's happening to you. So what you're feeling and what's around you seems in harmony, seems in resonance, and it's not good. It doesn't feel good. And eventually your fears become self-fulfilling prophecy. I know I just breezed through this. This probably this merits its own video. Wow, we're at 42 minutes now. Wow. Hopefully I didn't bore you to death. Hopefully I didn't confuse you. But basically the information I was trying to deliver to you is that there is a way to heal your codependency. It requires some difficult training, for sure. Emotions can be incredibly overwhelming, but there is a way to do it. And, and it's ultimately what it's going to give you is self-compassion, allow you to cultivate more of it, and eventually also more compassion towards other beings, other sentient beings, and allow you to create beautiful connections with other people after you have healed yourself. But before you do that now, our body is really smart. When you've been through a relationship with a predator, your body naturally wants to withdraw and hide and hibernate, and that is good. That is exactly what you want to do. Get to know yourself, cultivate your self-compassion, and you're going to soon find yourself living a new reality, a new life, and now is the best time to do that. So hopefully this video helped you. If so, please click like, subscribe, and I invite you, like I mentioned before, to check out my Medium page. Soul GPS is you got to punch in when you go in there, and there's a ton of good articles, step-by-step instructions, how to process some of the things, and stuff you can read on the fly. If you're unable to listen to a video, you can always pop in and check on that. So I'm sending you lots of love from New York. We're having a beautiful sunny day before another storm comes in, so enjoying the sunshine. Anyway, sending you all my best, and I will see you soon in another video. Bye-bye.